do extend to hear tell this day inspiring tales of video game development. Without further ado, I give to you Fable! Okay, so I was asked. It's fantastic to do this talk. This is the kind of last talk before everyone gets to play Fable, so it's very nerve-wracking. I was thinking about what to talk about, and I thought, well, rather than show off the normal Square features, we've got one more little surprise to talk about, which we'll be revealing today. But I thought I'd go back and talk about where it started, what the inspiration for Fable was. So we're going to, just press my clicker, we're going to actually be talking about how we got from a conversation which me, Simon Carter and Dean Carter had back in, I think it was 1996, when we were developing a game. You can just see a little insert down there called Dungeon Keeper. Anyone play Dungeon Keeper? It's okay, it was a normal, we promised a lot, but didn't quite deliver on everything, but there you go, that's what we are. We were talking about this, and we were saying, we all three of us just loved, we absolutely adored role-playing games. We loved that feeling of leveling up. That's really what we talked about. We used to talk about Dean Carter was this a darkly romantic character that always played a kind of magic user, and Simon was always a fighter, and I was always a thief. And we were talking about it. We really spoke about our frustrations. So we spoke about the frustration of there's so many numbers in role-playing games those days. There was dexterity and strength and charisma and how you change the game on changing all these numbers was really frustrating. And also the stories were always about, some weird character from the planet Uzo comes to Floppy Dobby and has a hippy-dippy time. And it's a lot of role-playing game stories didn't make sense, and we thought at that time, hey, why wouldn't it be great? And this is what we were talking about. We do talk about the opportunity of making it, just talking about the fascination of making it. Wouldn't it be amazing to make a role-playing game which was like this epic saga, that you could take a player on a journey, and that journey started in a land which, you know, had a kind of history and a kind of sense to it. And that conversation, it kind of stayed with us. And so later on, in about 1998, we had the opportunity to start a new project. And we remembered this conversation we had about role-playing games. And Simon and Dean and myself sat down and talked about, you know, okay, if we're going to make a role-playing game, we should make a different role-playing game. We should definitely make a world which is filled with humour and a story which kind of involves you rather than you, a person, playing a character which is kind of in some way predefined to you. Your character kind of evolved as you played it. And we went away and we started looking at some movies and talking about some inspirations. I'm just going to take you through some of those movies and some of those moments. And we're going to do this for Fable 1, Fable 2 and Fable 3. And I want to put my phone down because otherwise I will just yabber on for hours. I can spend no time here. So let's talk about the first movie inspiration that we went on to, and it was a movie called Sleepy Hollow. Has anyone seen Sleepy Hollow? Yeah. We all watched Sleepy Hollow together. We loved lots of things about Sleepy Hollow. The first thing was, it was loud. Let's bring that down so I can talk over. The first thing was, the look of it was just exactly what was in our minds. It was a fantasy world. Absolutely, it was a kind of a fairy tale world, but it was also there was something real about it. You could imagine this place existed. You know, it wasn't, you know, set on a cloud, you know, floating through the sky. It was, you know, set in the real world. But there was this fantasy fairy tale aspect. And it was from this one movie that we came up with the idea of Albion. And Albion is the Old English name for England, and we realised that England has this huge heritage of fairy tales, and a lot of those fairy tales are very, very dark. I mean, if you were writing those fairy tales in today's world, there's no way you get away with it, because they often involve eating children or abusing children or just doing despicable things to children generally. It just seems to be our Old English fairy tales. And, you know, so we love that sort of world of reality paired up with fantasy. And we then started to think about, okay, if we got the world of Albion, who are you in this world? And if we're taking you on this long journey, who are you in this world and who else is in this world? And that's when we more spoke about than watched a film of one of the greatest legends that we have. Whether it's a fairy tale or whether it's a legend, doesn't really matter, but it's a great legend. And that is the legend of King Arthur. We loved the idea of Excalibur, this magic sword, a woman in the lake, being this advisor. You can see that woman in the lake actually with the birthplace of a character called Teresa, which continues to exist in Fable. We love the idea of this being this group of heroes, or knights in King Arthur's case, all of which went out in the name of good, and you know, they went out and battled against evil, and you had this King Arthur character. So we were really inspired by that, and because of that conversation we created something called the Guild. And the Guild in Fable 1 was a place where lots of heroes collected. Now at that time we knew, or we hoped, we dared to hope, that we would go on to make Fable 2. So we knew we were going to destroy this place, the Guild, and we knew that we were going to go to a place where there were less heroes. But this idea of there being lots of heroes, and you starting the game out as a little kid, there being something special about you going into this Guild and becoming a hero was, you know, a really cool idea. The other aspect that was really unique about Fable was this idea, this really strong idea, rather than you choosing your hero at the start of the game. In other words, I'm going to be a mage, I'm going to be a thief, I'm going to be a fighter, I'm going to look like this, my character's going to have big eyes or small eyes. We had this really strong idea, mainly from this one film, which is called The Picture of Dorian Gray. And the idea behind this film was that this character called Dorian Gray looked like a really beautiful person, but on the inside he was really evil. And this picture reflected his true nature. That inspiration for this, that gave us the inspiration of doing something called morphing, where we thought, why don't we simply say this? Why don't we say it's what the player does which dictates what the player looks like? So we love that idea that if you were evil, you became more evil looking. If you were good, you became more good looking. That's right, isn't it? Yeah. And we really adored that idea of this morphing stuff, and that became a big USP of Fable, and it's still there, exists in Fable 3. And in fact, in Fable 3, we've taken it even further and allow you to craft your own weapons. Not using exactly the same idea, not by using some sort of interface where you press buttons to make the sword longer or shorter, or you push jewels into it to make it more shiny or not, but simply we're taking that same idea. Why not change the weapon in Fable 3 based on how you fight as a player, rather than based upon some choice you make in some menu. So that's a really cool idea, and I really still love it. I really like the idea is, we're still, I still think there's a way to go on this. You are unique. You're a unique human being, and why shouldn't your character be unique? So that inspired us there. We then we went away and we worked hard at building up a team. They were based in Godalming. The team was called Big Blue Box, and we were lucky enough to get a contract with Microsoft, and then I went out to the press, and then I said something terrible. Probably the worst thing I've ever said in my life. And that is, I said, Fable is going to be the greatest role-playing game of all time. But quite rightfully so, you all turned around to me and said, what a load of bullshit. He's talking. He's over-promising and blah, 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 blah. And I got into an awful lot of trouble, and I think it was then that I realised that's the first time I really realised that you can make huge mistakes in the press. You can't just stand up in front of people and get all enthusiastic like I do with developers. But anyway, we went out there. We went out there, it's true, with the intention of making the greatest role-playing game of all time, and we're still trying to make the greatest role-playing game of all time. Anyway, a game came out, and it's an amazing thing when you release a game. You're never sure how a world's going to receive it. And your publisher tends to always fill you with doom and gloom, and oh my goodness, that's probably not going to sell. And you have this thing called a forecast, and the forecast is always, well, it could possibly sell this much, and you're thinking, my God, I didn't make a game to sell, 100 units. It should be 1 million units, 10 million units. Anyway, Fable came out, and it was just hugely successful. And we really felt like, my goodness, this amazing feeling of that conversation back in 1996 led to the start of something that we love so much that we're making. So, immediately we finished Fable 1, we moved on to Fable 2. And these are some of the concepts, by the way, from Fable 1. This was, part of the thing I love is taking a player on a journey, and starting you off as a kid, and you having a feeling that you're growing in power, but also growing up as an individual was something that we really, really loved. And so that concept that we had really kind of shaped our thought, especially if you look in the water there, either side of it. This was the first incarnation of the Hob character, which is, we still have in Fable 3. We love these Hobs. They're perfectly evil creatures without any morals. They kind of like eating children, rather like the original fairy tale characters that are there. A few more concepts. This is the very first look of what we hoped a forest would look like. We actually were going to make Fable more stylized than it is today. And so this was one of our very first concepts we have. We spoke about this cottage in the woods and how we could, who would be in that cottage. And but we decided to make it slightly more realistic, as you saw from Fable 1. And then this was, when we were talking about morphing, this is what we were thinking of, that people could play as. They could kind of play with, as a thief, or as a fighter, or as a magic user. Anyway, that takes us on. Oh, by the way, this is down in Fable 1, this was the concept for the tentacle boss creature that you had to fight when you were coming out of the prison. It's remarkable how close our final game was to something like that. So, we finished Fable 1, it was pretty successful. Then we had the big problem. One of the big problems was that a lot of people were very, very upset that we didn't implement some of the features that me and I had spoken about. Maybe it seemed to be centered for some reason around an acorn and an oak tree, which was insane because it was such a small little feature I was talking about. The idea that you could plant an acorn, come back to that level, and see it grow into an oak tree. I still can't quite understand why people were so excited about that. We have an acorn on an oak tree and no swords. I think I'd choose the swords personally, but there you go. Anyway, so we went away and we had a long list of things that we wanted to do. And it was, more weapons and more levels and, a bigger world and better pacing, better story. But there was something that we could have asked ourselves. One is that, should we always stick with what we originally defined Fable to be? In other words, it would be a game about fighting and it would be a game about leveling up. And we said to ourselves, no, we should put innovation every time we release Fable. There should be innovation in there. We should really surprise people. And so some of those surprises we really in Fable 2 centered around the dog. And the dog actually turned out to be a huge success. Telling the story around this dog was really, really exciting. And so we got the inspiration for the dog came from this movie. Anyone tell me what that movie is? Oh, lots of prizes for you if you got that right. If you 100% get it right. It was a movie called Mad Max, and great movie, but the dog in Mad Max was fantastic. It was this little scamp of a dog, Mel Gibson was the archetypal hero in a wasteland world, and yet he was saying he was so tough, and yet this dog softened him. The bond between his dog was fantastic. And after watching that movie, we had the idea of, that's the answer. This is how we're going to tell a story that people remember, is to give something for them to care about. Give something that is a little bit vulnerable, like this dog was. This dog obviously loved the Mad Max character, but it was the fact that they had this bond which was obvious in the movie. And for me, that movie was great because of that dog. It was also a great movie as well. But it was the bond that dog had with its owner. And the idea that, that if someone hurt the dog, then the Mad Max character just went crazy. That was the ultimate sin. And that's how we started to dog. And because of this movie, a lot of the Fable 2 story was crafted around that dog, especially the end. Now, how many people here got to the end of Fable 2? Okay. How many people didn't get to the end of Fable 2 that started playing it? Okay, just to tell those people, seeing your hands up is like stabbing me in the heart. You know, it's about the worst thing you can possibly do. I actually want to commit suicide because of that, you know. Now, here's the interesting question. How many of the people that played Fable, how many people saved the dog and your family? Okay. You do realise you killed thousands of people doing that. That was probably one of the most selfish things you could do. I mean, you know, that's pretty awful. Who cares about nameless strangers? That's a really interesting thing. And if we had not had the dog and just said, oh, you can save your friends or people that you travel with, I think hardly anybody would have chosen that. They would have chosen to save thousands of people. So I think the dog really, really worked for me. Now, interestingly, because of this, just shows you how things flow through creatively. Because of the dog, and because of the big decision at the end of Fable 2, that really influenced the start of Fable 3. Because whilst this trick with the dog worked incredibly well, we also got absolutely flamed to bits by you guys by saying, you know, how dare you make me take such a decision? Now, that's a terrible decision. It's at the end of the game. And for me, you know, the end of Fable 2, because of that, was a terrible ending of the game. I still think it's a great ending. Because of that, we took that big decision you have at the end of Fable 2, and we put a huge decision at the start of Fable 3. So within the first 10 minutes, we give you what we think of as pretty much as equal a big decision at the start of Fable 3. So we want to get you set, and you can, I won't spoil it, well, probably many of you people know, I won't spoil it what it actually is, but when you actually get to play that, think about making you make that decision. Why we're doing that. We're doing that because we want to establish the bad in character. When you come to that, you realise that we did that because if we make you care about something, we can also make you hate something that you care about. So, you know, when you come to that moment, remember this is what you can say. The other inspiration for Fable 2 was combat. Now, the combat on Fable 1 was okay, it was a bit complex, there was lots of blocking buttons, and there was lots of, there was about 4 or 5 button combinations just to do an efficient swing. And we watched this movie called Kill Bill, which I still rate as one of my favourite movies of all time, because what Quentin Tarantino did, fascinatingly, it was one of the first movies really where it was this dramatic, over-the-top combat. But you saw this character, the bride, and she was, at one point in the story, her blade, and this is what that clip showed, her blade could kill 88 of these samurai masters. Then immediately after this clip, she then went on to battle someone called Oran, and then her blade essentially turned from something that could just kill with one swing into this big boss fight battle. And that was great inspiration for something that we did with Fable 2, which is called one-button combat, or just not totally cuts. One-button combat. And one-button combat, the idea of one-button combat really was to make you feel heroic. Make you feel like you could do some fantastic, incredible moves. And the inspiration in Kill Bill was, hey, why don't we change the context of what you do, depending on the situation of where you are. So we played an awful lot around that. And one of the reasons I really wanted to do this, and I was passionate about this, was that playing a lot of fighting games, which I love fighting games, you know, Street Fighter, everything from Street Fighter to Tekken to, you know, to all of this fighting games. The trouble was, when I played them, the coolest moves were totally inaccessible to me. So my thumb, especially at the moment, is just not up to the dexterous nature that those things would be. So, you know, I thought, why not focus on one button, focus on the player tapping the button or hitting it with rhythm or holding and building it up. And what we've done in Fable 3 is take that, you know, 5, 6 times further than ever before. Not only because we've really crafted it now, and someone called Josh Atkins, who's a world expert in combat, has really taken it on, loved it, and made it shine even more. But the simple idea that your one-button combat now is changed by your morphing button as well. So that's pretty cool, and that's where watching this film is when all that started. Now, the next thing was the story itself, or the world of Albion in Fable 2. If we were kind of set in the time of King Arthur and the knights, in this time of legend, in this time of heroic battles, what should we set Fable 2 in? Remember that we're on a journey. We're taking you on a journey not only through different stories, but through time. So we decided to move the world further on, and we were really inspired by the legend of Robin Hood. Now, if you think of Robin Hood, compare Robin Hood to something like King Arthur, Robin Hood is, in a way, is a similar-ish character. You know, he fights for good, he steals from the rich and gives to the poor, but there's nothing mythical about him. There's nothing magical about him. He is, you know, a hero within a land that is suffering. We were really inspired by that, and that's where we had the idea of starting to diminish the magic within Albion, and we started saying this, maybe you should be the only person in Albion who can cast magic, because of that guild seal that you hold. And maybe we can make the Teresa character, you know, like the seer character. And so that's how we formed what the world would be and what the world would become. We had the idea of the spire, and you know, this idea that you could see the spire anywhere. We started building up this really interesting mystery, which we really haven't told you everything about why the spire was built. Did Teresa, interestingly in Fable 2, did Teresa cause the spire to be built? Did Teresa, for those Fable real fans in here, that really know the backstory, we had lots of conversations about, actually maybe Teresa had killed Logan. Logan was the ruler that built the spire. The reason he built the spire was to try and bring back his wife and daughter. Had Teresa killed the wife and daughter to motivate Logan to build the spire? That's an interesting question which we haven't really completely answered yet. Anyway, Fable 2, after we thought about the story, thought about the mechanics, thought about the special thing of the dog, we then obviously went off and started to concept. And you can see how the characters are developed. This was one of the very first concepts that we had, which was the hero and his dog. This was the first incantation of what we thought the dog would be like. You can see we were thinking about him being a bit more of a mutt, a little bit more cartoony. We were playing around with him showing emotions on his face, but then we realised that was wrong because it meant that he was less of a dog, and the further away we went from him being a dog, the further away he was from you caring about him. Also, we introduced a female hero. I think we realised in Fable 1 that a lot of the people who really loved the Fable world were women. They were, they're the partners of gamers, and I still can't persuade my wife to like Fable, but never mind. And, you know, why not introduce a woman character? We had this absolutely huge, raging argument. It lasted a whole week. And it was between me and Simon Carter and Dean Carter about whether or not we should have guns. And they were super passionate about bows and arrows. And we dropped bows and arrows and replaced them with guns. I won that one. And, you know, Fable 2 came out. It was an incredible success again. There started to be some strange things that happened. We heard news after Fable 2 came out of the American Fable family. There's a family in America that live life as if they are in Albion. They're married to each other and they dress as their Fable character. They live life as if they're in Albion. Their children, they've now got 2 of them, they showed a photograph of their baby in a little peasant's outfit when it was about a week after it was born. That child is now about to go to preschool. I can't imagine how it's going to be teased when it comes up in a jerkin and flapped down on the trousers, but there you go. I'm not going to stop this person doing this. God knows what this family is going to turn into after Fable 3, by the way. But they'll try and be king or something, I don't know. So we really got a real feeling, my goodness, you know, people love this place. They love the moral choices that we're giving them, but we still want to be ambitious. We still want to give things, new things to the world. And so, again, we went off and we started thinking, oops, I've hit back. We started thinking about what should inspire us for Fable 3. And the first thing, one of the first inspirations was a game that we played, which I think probably is the greatest game design ever. Woo! It's called Ico. It's the most amazing setting. If you think it breaks every single game design rule in the book, but it had this wonderful mechanic in there, which was touch. And the ability for this main character, we haven't got it in this clip, this main character to reach out and touch this girl. And that was a fantastic thing. And just because of that, there was this huge emotional link between the boy character, which I can't remember his name, unfortunately, and the girl character, which I can't remember her name either. And why not just steal that mechanic? So we've got that mechanic in the game. You will be touching people in various places in their body, and you will feel the same emotion as if I touched various people in this audience in various places. It looks like disgust in my case, but you will feel that, and we are using that in the story. So at certain times with touch, you'll be leading and guiding people. You use touch in the first 5 minutes of the story. Other times you'll be dragging people. Other times you'll be guided by people, and it is a fantastic mechanic. It's not the centre of the game like the dog was, but it is a great, great mechanic. So we took lots of inspiration from that. The other inspiration was the look at the setting again. So we had Sleepy Hollow, obviously in Fable 1, and there was a film called Perfume, where we were thinking about what the city of Bowerstone, the main capital of Bowerstone, should look like. And there's this wonderful film, if no one's seen this great film, but how they visualised what Paris was like as being this place which was, you know, full of sort of crime and oppression. There had been these 2 classes in there, the totally downtrodden and the totally wealthy in there. And the start of Perfume was fantastic inspiration from that, even down to the palette. If you look, you can't really see it in this clip, but the sort of yellows and golds they used when they shot Paris was fantastic inspiration. But the main inspiration for the story and the feel of the story and the feel of the world was this, Oliver Twist. We loved the idea of why don't we set Fable 3 in the same sort of time as Charles Dickens set Oliver Twist. So the idea of there being a city, you will see when you play Fable 3, there are places, if you watch Oliver Twist, there are places in Bowerstone Industrial that will look almost identical to this film. The idea that Bowerstone now is made up of the familiar that you see from Fable 2, remastered of course, and the completely new, like the industrial sections. And we love that idea, we love the idea of crime, and we adore the idea of setting all that where we put a simple story to you. You're a revolutionary, you're going to rebel against the king, and then you're going to become king. And we love that idea of progression from Fable 1. Fable 1 was all about you being one of many heroes. Fable 2, you're more or less the only hero. Fable 3, you're going to be king. So we love that idea of progression and progression through time. And we are going to put a huge plot twist in when you become king. And for the first time ever, I've shut my mouth up about that and not shown off about it, which is very hard to do, I can assure you. But there is this wonderful moment when you become king when it dawns on you some real things about playing Fable dawn on you. But you are going to become king. Your land of Albion will be very, very much up to you and up to what your moral decisions are going to be, and the people may end up suffering more under your rule or less. So that's more or less it, but this is some of the concept art. You can see, again, thinking about what it meant to be a sort of evil king, some of the clothing that the king's guards would wear. In fact, this was one of the first incantations of the Walter character. These posters that you see, there's hundreds of them through the land. They will change depending upon your rule and depending on what's going on. Now, that brings me on to one more thing that we're doing just before launch. It's something called Kingmaker. It's a mobile phone app. It will be available from, I think it's today, actually. I think it is today, at some point today, and it's this. You can download this app, you can play it on your mobile phone, and when you register, you are put in onto the side of what could be the rebels, or you could go on the side of the loyalists. Then, depending on what we're doing, we're going to see who's going to win out of those two factions. The way you make your side win is to go to a location like being here, rather like there's something called Foursquare. You can go to a location, any location in the UK, you can check in, and that earns a point for your side. And we're going to see, by the time Fable launches, who's going to win. Is it going to be the loyalists, or is it going to be the rebels? Also, on top of that, every time you check in, which you can do online, on the web, or on your mobile phone, every time you check in, you earn Fable Gold. That Fable Gold can be imported into your Fable 3, and incidentally, if you do pre-order Fable 3, you get slightly more gold. If you earn Fable 3, you get even more gold. So I love this very simple app. I'm going to be so fascinated to see whether the loyalists win or the rebels win. I love the fact that people can have quite a bit of money, not quite so much money as Fable 2 had, because people found a huge exploit in the pub games of Fable 2. But I love the idea of you being able to earn gold. I love the idea of possibly having things like treasure hunts with this. You'll see some of these surprises come out. So, if you go and download that app or go online, it's fantastic. I'm going to be on there. The whole of Lionhead's on there. We're trying to see who can get the most votes in Lionhead. So there we are. That is, I think we've got a closing video. that is where we stand, that's the inspiration. We absolutely love making Fable. You know, the team is so excited about people playing the game. We're also incredibly nervous about it. Undoubtedly, Fable 3 is undoubtedly the best Fable there ever has been. I think you're going to be totally blown away by the pace and the story and the surprises. Totally blown away about our new leveling up system. Totally blown away about the incredible cast. I mean, this cast would be a fantastic cast of a big budget movie, and we've got that cast in spades. The dog's back. You've got Graham Butler. You know, you become king. That's all absolutely fantastic. If anyone's got any specific questions for me, I'm just going to be at the back here. I'm happy to take on specific questions. Did I overrun? Does anyone know? Yes. I'm going to get off stage. Thank you very much, everybody.
Free souvenirs of this splendid place. Your Excellency